Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. It's our Week 12 instant reaction. Of course, we already reacted instantly to things. This is just the Sunday slate here, Sam. As always, some big surprises, some upsets. It started in the 1 o'clock hour with games like the Jaguars going for two to beat the Baltimore Ravens, pulling the upset there. And we just saw the walk-off win for the second week in a row, overtime walk-off by the Las Vegas Raiders beating the Seattle Seahawks. What else among those things stood out to you this week?
Yeah, that Jacksonville win was obviously a pretty crazy game. I don't think many people expected them to spring an upset over Baltimore, but it was also a real statement from Trevor Lawrence. You know, one of those potential things to hang your hat on with him going forward. A key game-winning drive, a really nice play on the two-point attempt to win the game. Like, that could be the coming out party that I think everybody's been waiting for from Trevor Lawrence. And he got it done with those much maligned receivers that everybody's been complaining about, actually making a series of big plays on that game-winning drive and helping him out, doing their part.
That's definitely my biggest takeaway from that Jags game. If you guys have listened to the PFF NFL podcast, I've been asking for that drive for a while from Trevor Lawrence. Let's see that one where you're the number one overall pick, where you're making big-time throws. And boy, he just marched the Jaguars down the field. And then, they're reviewing the touchdown, and it looked like they were going to just kick the extra point and potentially go to overtime against the Ravens. But Doug Peterson reconsiders, goes for two, and ends up paying off. Although we did also get to see Justin Tucker attempt a 67-yard field goal. Yeah. And I think everybody's like, well, of course, Justin Tucker, he can hit anything.
They really almost butchered those final seconds. There were, 14 seconds left on the clock or something once they'd scored the two-point conversion, which, as we know from Chiefs and Bills games, 14 seconds is enough time to move the ball into field goal range, particularly if you're going to squib kick and let them have the ball to start with on like the 40-yard line. I mean, I get that you chew a couple of seconds off the clock while you're doing that, but they're getting the ball quite a lot further than if you just booted it through the back of the end zone and made them start at the 25. Like, it's probably worth the trade-off of the few seconds. Like, kick it long, kick it out of the end zone, make them start from the 25, and make them go as far as possible to get into field goal range.
The game we just saw, Vegas beating the Seattle Seahawks 40-34, incredible back-and-forth game. The game ends on a Josh Jacobs 86-yard touchdown for a score. A walk-off win for the Raiders and so many fantasy teams with Jacobs dominating in this game. But boy, I mean, an incredible game. I mean, there was a point in the game where Derek Carr had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions on his first 10, 12 passes, whatever it was. Incredible back-and-forth game. Geno Smith had his ups and downs, but he was making his big-time throws. It looked like Seattle had this game in hand, but the Raiders come back to tie it, to send it to overtime. Both teams have the ball for a possession, and then Jacobs runs away with it for 86 yards. Just more life for the Raiders here.
More life for the Raiders. Another great game from Josh Jacobs, who's been playing fantastically well this season. I mean, he has been potentially exceeding the performance of his run blocking, maybe better than any other running back in the NFL. Nick Chubb has been getting it done, but Nick Chubb's got one of the best run blocking units in the league in front of him. Derrick Henry and the Titans is a bit of a weird relationship, but like Josh Jacobs, what he's doing behind that Raiders offensive line all season long, I think has been incredibly impressive.
Back in the 1 o'clock game, Cincinnati Bengals beating the Tennessee Titans. The Bengals moved to 7-4, Titans falling to 7-4. That was one of those just as hard fought as we expected it to be, but I thought Joe Burrow making big-time throws down the stretch and finding T. Higgins. We see once again another week without Jamar Chase where the Bengals have to rely on T. Higgins, and it was a lot of Joe Burrow throwing outside the numbers and trusting Higgins to go up and get it, and I think that bodes well for the Bengals of obviously winning games now, but even more so when Chase comes back.
Yeah, it's a couple of games now where the question has kind of been, okay, everybody talks up T. Higgins as long as Jamar Chase is on the other side taking all the coverage away. Can he be that guy without Jamar Chase in the lineup? And for 2 weeks now, I think we've seen that he can be. He's won a bunch of contested catches. He's won a bunch in single coverage. He's made some really big plays for the Bengals offense when they needed him. I think that's been a huge couple of weeks for T. Higgins personally and for that Bengals offense to show that they can still function in a couple of different ways. T. Higgins the last couple of weeks, Joe Mixon the week before that, without Jamar Chase, so that when Jamar Chase does come back, that moves the needle for them in a huge way. And the Bengals have kind of kept themselves around and are still very much in the hunt.
DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. It's my go-to when betting on the NFL this holiday season. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Check it out. Right now, everyone can earn up to 100% boost with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same-game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, player props, point totals, and more. The more legs you add, the bigger the boost, the bigger your shot to win big. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code PFF. Place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code PFF. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Another surprising game in the 1 o'clock hour, the Cleveland Browns, 23-17 over the Tampa Bay Bucks. A game that throughout the second half felt like the Bucks had the game in hand. There's a 4th and 9. Jacoby Brissett throws it up to David Njoku, who makes an incredible one-handed catch to tie the game. Browns kick the extra point, tie the game, and then win it eventually in overtime. Bucks fall to 4-6, and this was the last start for Brissett. Good way to go out with Deshaun Watson coming back. Browns move to 4-7.
Yeah, it felt like they had it in hand right up, I think, until that one-handed catch by Njoku, which
pretty much
leveled it up. And it's crazy. Like last week, the story was how Jacoby Brissett was being let down by his tight ends, right? There were maybe 3 missed touchdowns that his tight ends had between a slight overthrow, between a drop pass, between one that was somewhere in the middle. And then on this particular play, right at the death, right when they needed it, David Njoku makes a spectacular one-handed catch to score the touchdown and put them right back in it. And then obviously Nick Chubb doing what he does in overtime.
There's another game that had incredible late game dramatics. I'll get to that in a second. But one of the other big stories here, the Jets winning 31-10 against the Chicago Bears. The Jets offense looking really good, but not with Zach Wilson. It's with Mike White. After Zach Wilson's benched, Mike White goes 22 of 28 for 315, 3 touchdowns. And look, Garrett Wilson running, 30 yards after the catch for a touchdown and stuff like that. The stats are looking really good for Mike White, but this offense clearly looking different for the second straight year once Mike White comes in for Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's the critical thing. Mike White looked fine. He looked pretty good, but he didn't look great. And I think anybody watching this game comes out with the same conclusion, which is like Mike White was good enough for everybody else to work well. And even his head coach, Robert Saleh, summed it up really well just by saying he made the easy stuff look easy. And that was the problem with Zach Wilson, is that he was making the easy stuff look hard. And that's all they needed, was somebody to make the easy stuff actually look like it's easy. And all of a sudden everybody else fires. And we saw like Garrett Wilson looks like an all-pro with anybody other than Zach Wilson throwing in the football, whether it was Joe Flacco at the start of the year, whether it's Mike White now. So that's the key, is that Mike White probably has a ceiling. Mike White might not be the quarterback going forward, probably isn't a long-term answer. But for right now, he's obviously a better option to win them games. Like he makes the offense function. But it is worth pointing out with that one caveat of this was against the Bears defense, which was supposed to be a get right spot for Zach Wilson. Like this is a very good defense to look good against.
Yeah, I mean, it's still encouraging for the Jets to see Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Tyler Conklin, guys that they invested in, heavy draft capital, a free agent like Conklin. Those are the guys that they built their offense around to make Zach Wilson look good, and he makes Mike White look good. They all make Mike White look good in this game. The other 4 o'clock game that came down to the wire, Los Angeles Chargers, aggressive, going for 2 at the very end. A touchdown to get within 1, 24-23. They go for 2. They get it to win 25-24. Chargers move to 6-5, beating the Cardinals, who are 4-8. Felt like a game where a lot of the stars were just making plays in this one, Sam. Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, the player, number 3 for the Chargers. A lot of stars on display in this back-and-forth battle.
And a game that threatened to get away from them a little bit early. Like the Cardinals came out swinging. The Cardinals scored first. The Cardinals were causing problems. And it almost was that sort of interception from the player, number 3, the Chargers man that we cannot name, even if you did, and he's still up and running. Got the interception. It was almost like that transformed things. That gave them like a spark of, yeah, we can still do this. We can still come back. And then it became a bit of a back and forth. And ultimately they got that final score and stayed aggressive. Like Brandon Staley kind of gone back into a shell this season in terms of 4th down decisions. There were people all last season that were saying his hyper aggressiveness was not like a sharp analytics push. It was just, he was weirdly aggressive. Like he was going for a bunch of fourth downs where the analytics, the data says, don't go, like kick it. This is not the down to go for them fourth down. He was just over aggressive last year. That's almost like that's gone the other direction this year where he's been too conservative, but this was a critical one where you should go for it. They did, they got the payoff and you got the win.
All right, guys, you know the drill. It's week 12. It's our instant reaction, but tomorrow morning, it's the full 2 hours plus reviewing all of the week 12 NFL action on the PFF NFL podcast. Join us live on YouTube, 7 a.m. sharp Eastern time. Right now, it's the PFF NFL Daily.